It is 1 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Pro Days underway in Knoxville as Tennessee draft prospects will be in action in front of NFL coaches and scouts. Defensive lineman Matthew Butler, corner Alante Taylor, receiver Velus Jones Jr., and offensive lineman Cade Mays among the 9 total prospects in action today. The Baltimore Ravens have extended head coach John Harbaugh through the 2025 season. Now entering his 15th year as the head coach in Baltimore, Harbaugh is the league's third longest tenured head coach. Tiger Woods was seen at Augusta National playing 18 holes ahead of next week's Masters yesterday, increasing speculation that he will play in the tournament. Woods is 14 months removed from a car wreck where he suffered serious leg and foot injuries. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once in your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What's going on, everybody? I didn't know what day it was yesterday. I'm fully aware that it's Wednesday today, though, so I'll say happy hump day to everybody. I had no idea what day it was. I ended the show and said, tomorrow's Thursday. Let's have a great... No, that's not right. I had no idea what day it was.
Neither of us corrected you.
That was fantastic.
We were on the same page.
As a team, we had, no concept of what day it was. Or maybe you guys just were like, okay, whatever, dummy, let's get out of here.
No, I just, sometimes I get confused myself. You made me start, second guessing myself that when you said,
Wait a second.
No,
what?
No, today is Tuesday, right? Now today is Wednesday.
This Tiger Woods playing at the Masters thing, Lucas just mentioned it in his update. Let me ask you this. Would either one of you guys just sit down on a Sunday afternoon or Saturday when there was no football and go, yeah, I'm going to watch the John Deere Open with no Tiger, just some other great golfers. I'm going to watch this tournament. Or if you walked by and saw Tiger Woods hitting, would you think, I may sit down and watch a little bit of this? Does he make you want to watch golf?
I'm probably not watching golf unless it's a major, no matter what.
Okay.
I would say at this point, there's always something surrounding Tiger Woods, whether it was he was so great, so you're tuning in. And only really for me personally, maybe earlier in the week, but then more so if he's in the hunt at the end.
Yeah.
And then with, all the different injuries to see if he could come back. This time he's coming back from a horrific car, crash. And so maybe I'll tune in if he's in the hunt at the end. I would probably want to see him in the beginning if I'm free and sitting around and lounging around the house. Yeah, I would because he's, if not the greatest, one of the greatest of all time. So, yeah, I would tune in just to see what he looks like. And even if he wasn't in the hunt, just to say, okay, I can see how he could build on this down the road.
You know what's amazing to me? And again, we're going off the teleprompter here. We didn't script this for the show today, but I was listening to Lucas do that update, and it really made me think about this. Is that what makes the NFL so different? Is it doesn't even matter what teams are playing? I mean, there are players like Tom Brady moves the needle more than other players, but people just watch the NFL. All the games have unbelievable numbers. But for golf, you probably need Tiger Woods.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, okay, if Tiger Woods is easily that guy in golf, even the older Tiger Woods, like you said, who's been through the troubles and the accident and everything else, if he's anywhere near in the hunt this weekend, the ratings are going to be through the roof for that thing. And if he's not, it probably won't be as good. Who's that guy in the NBA anymore? Is it Steph Curry? Because LeBron's been beat up, and I like watching LeBron play, and I really loved watching him play at times, but he's been beat up. He twisted his ankle the other night, and the Lakers aren't good. Who are the people that if you walk by the TV and that person is on, you think, I have to watch? Because Tiger Woods is still that guy. It's unbelievable, despite all the troubles and all the health issues. Cousin Andrew says, I ain't going to watch golf, period. Prometheus says yes, meaning we'll watch if Tiger Woods is there. Do you guys...
I'm not going to sit down and watch the entire deal, but I want to see the comeback stories. Always the big deal when it comes to me for him. And I just want to see if he can recreate it. That's really hard to do when you're on top. And then how he handles the emotions of golf and manage that, knowing what he used to do and now that he probably can't do some of those things. So how did he adjust his game to be effective in today's golf with the Tiger Woods of today? So that's always intriguing to me. There, that happens in all the sports when you start getting older. His is more not just because he's getting older, just all the injuries. So I'd love to see if he could do it one more time. That's me. So yeah.
Prometheus says Ja in the Zone TV
I was
chat.
going to say maybe Ja.
Yeah, Ja,
But not to
Curry.
that extent, right?
I would still say LeBron. As he gets up in age, it's kind of remarkable just to see that he's still going. He just got injured, a couple games ago, but just to see how well he's doing at this. What is he, 37?
37.
Now his new drive, I think, is to see if he can play until his son gets in the league. Because I've seen a new LeBron. I mean, the game I watched a couple games ago, he hit like 6 3-pointers, like way away from the line, not by the line, on the toes on the line. I'm like, okay, so he's trying to still create this LeBron James that is not the high flyer. I'm the most athletic.
Right.
Now I'm a skilled, I'm a shooter. There's really hard for you to find a player that can actually defend me. You put a big man, I'm going to pull him out. So he's still going, and I just want to see how long he can go. And then now he's second all-time in scoring.
Mm-hmm.
Right, he passed not Moses Malone, Karl Malone.
The postman.
Karl
Yeah.
Malone, right. Yeah, so Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So is that another record he's trying to take down, which is going to take him probably about 3 more years. So then that takes him into his son playing pro ball if he comes out, right out of high school or so, whatever it may be. So I think now he has a new motivation. So is Tiger Woods' new motivation, back to Tiger, to see how long he can go till maybe he plays with his son. Or on the same course with his son. So you just never know what motivates different guys as time goes on. I'm sure that wasn't their thought process in the beginning, but then when you become one of the best ever at your sport, you're in that conversation, there's have to be other things that takes you to this level to motivate, because you got all the money, you got all the things that you ever wanted, and you've done everything that you wanted to do, maybe in the community or whatever your goals were. Now, what is driving you? You must have drive to be successful at any level. And I'm just talking about sports in life.
Yeah.
And what is your drive?
I will say, I think the ratings jump that the Masters would see with Tiger Woods competing on Sunday of the Masters, as opposed to him not participating at all, would be similar to the ratings jump that the Oscars saw of Will Smith smacking Chris Rock, as opposed to Will Smith not smacking Chris Rock. And I don't know that there's anybody else in sports that can provide that individually.
Honestly, I don't think there is either.
Yeah,
I don't think there's an individual that can do it anymore. And that's what hurts sports like NASCAR. Like, I love NASCAR and can watch the race, but if you're a casual fan, there's nobody that makes you want to tune in anymore. It was Dale Earnhardt. And then for a lot of people, it was Dale Jr. There's no more Dale Earnhardts racing right now.
Nobody in baseball?
Boy, that's a good question. You got me. If people don't understand Shohei Ohtani,
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's the first person I can, because of what he's doing.
But again, not
pitching
a good team,
and batting.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, at one point, he was like the home run leader in the American League last year. He had, what was his ERA, like under 2?
Yeah.
He was doing historically hysterical stuff. But he's on the Angels. They play at 10 o'clock at night, Central. I mean,
Phenom. He's a different cat, man.
It's a once in
I thought when they first did this, when he first got into the league and he was doing pitching and batting, I said, man, they're going to mess up this guy, man.
Yep.
Yeah, because he wasn't as what they thought he was going to be. But gradually, slowly, he's gotten there, man. And it's pretty impressive to watch. It's almost like, when you're in high school and you got that guy who can bat as well as pitch. He's doing it at the pro level. That's remarkable.
Like, think of that's such a great example. Like, think of the guy, if you're young now, the guy at your high school, or that guy, just think of that person from back in the day. And, they won all their games pitching and they hit home runs and, maybe they got a college scholarship and they had to pick one or the other. This guy never had to pick, and he's still great at both.
And then he pitches left-handed and he bats right, or no, the opposite.
Opposite.
Yeah, he bats left-handed and he pitches right-handed. It's crazy.
But if
that sounds like something Lucas could do, like in his backyard. He could
wiffle ball league. But think about this:
if I could do it, though.
If we took Shohei Ohtani, if he came and we were like, "Thanks for coming. Let's go down to Broadway and let's walk him down Broadway." How many people do you think would like everybody? I think would recognize Tiger Woods. Everybody, every bachelorette, everybody. How many people do you think would know who Shohei Ohtani was?
I mean, well, probably not a lot. I mean, sports fans would, because they would know, especially people who are all in on sports. But most people, probably not.
And this dude is doing something that goes back to like Babe Ruth. He's doing something that people haven't seen for 100 years, a century, and he can do those things. And most people couldn't even pick him out of a lineup. See, that's a problem for baseball too.
But why don't they do a better job of promoting their superstars?
Boy, that's Blaine.
Or do they just don't want to? I mean, not Major League Baseball, even the actual players. The players have to take part in this too.
Yeah.
Especially with the social media era. I mean, they can now be a part of it like no other time.
And I don't even know if Shohei Ohtani has Twitter. And here's the other thing. Before him, the best player, if you ask most people, they'd say Mike Trout.
Yeah, right. Teammate. Mm-hmm.
Oh, my gosh. Guy hits like Mickey Mantle, runs, plays unbelievable defense. I mean, like the player comp for him for older people, they always say he's like Mickey Mantle. He's like Mickey Mantle. And people are like, hey, I don't stay up and watch the Angels play. No. He's a good player, I guess.
Well, I mean, you can go here. I mean, a lot of people here besides the Cardinals are Braves fans.
Yep.
Including myself. So, I mean, even, you just don't see them very active in that part of it.
That's just amazing to me. Well, you can hit us on Twitter at Blaine and Mickey. Who's the one athlete? It could be anybody. It could be somebody WNBA. It could be anybody. That one athlete that would make you watch a sport you otherwise wouldn't watch. I would love to hear. Hit us in his own TV chat. Hit us on Blaine and Mickey. We'll put that question out, actually, and you can jump on with us there. We do have a guest coming up. We got Justin Melo, who we've had on before, who's with the Draft Network. He's at Broadway Sports. This guy's fantastic with draft picks. So let's talk a little bit of draft. We can jump into this discussion again later. Just a little bit curious. Who moves the needle for you in sports? We'll continue to have this discussion. But Justin Melo coming up. Fantastic draft content. Titans as well. You don't want to miss it. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. We got all kinds of interesting chat going on here in the Zone TV chat. And Justin Melo joins us now on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline. Yeah, they're talking about this question. Justin, I'll ask you this, and this isn't like a scouting question or anything. He's at Justin M_NFL, Broadway Sports, the Draft Network. Always love catching up with you. Is there somebody that plays a sport that they're so good at what they do, you don't care about the sport, but you would watch the sport if they were playing? Does that make sense?
I mean, I think that's a fair question. I mean, for myself personally, I think of guys like Michael Phelps. I can't say that I'm a big swimming fan, but anytime Michael Phelps was set to compete, that's one. I'm not a big golf guy personally, so somebody like Tiger Woods, of course, anytime he was out there on the course is much watched television. And look, you could any sport, right? You may not be a basketball fan, but you may have had interest in watching Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Wayne Gretzky or Mario Lemieux in hockey, right? So I think there's a lot of athletes that sort of transcend the interest there.
Oh, that's a bunch of really good examples. You're taking this thing to a whole nother level. Well, let me ask you this. What is right now, we've had free agency. The Titans, of course, brought back some of their own guys, brought in Robert Woods, a couple other guys. If the draft were tomorrow, or just whenever it is, based on the moves that they've made, what's the biggest position need in the first round? What do they need to do at 26? You don't have to say a person. What position?
Yeah, it's a bit of a layered question. I think General Manager John Robinson has done a pretty good job setting himself up to take the best player available. Now, with that said, I'm going to shrink that lens a little bit. I still think it's a pick that has to be made on the offensive side of the ball. When I look at the wide receiver position, Robert Woods is obviously a terrific addition, a guy that's a great fit for their scheme and culture, has played in a similar system for several years in Los Angeles under Sean McVay and even Matt LaFleur, right, once upon a time, who initially installed Tennessee's offense that they still run today, even though they're two coordinators removed from LaFleur. But when I look at the addition of Robert Woods, I think John Robinson has to be very careful not to repeat last season's mistake. And what I mean by that is, you brought in a receiver in Julio Jones that had some injury concerns. Obviously, Woods comes here after tearing his ACL, and you sort of neglected the depth behind them, right, behind Julio Jones, behind A.J. Brown. I think you got to be careful not to make that same mistake this season. They have to go out and get a legitimate third wide receiver, a guy that can play more than 50% of snaps for you this coming season. When I look at the offensive line, I look at the hole at left guard that was created by releasing Roger Saffold. Now, you brought in a guy in Jamarco Jones, a versatile swing lineman over from the Seattle Seahawks, who Mike Vrabel, by the way, if you missed his comments, had some really interesting things to say the other day about Jones. Talked about knowing him back in high school, recruited him to Ohio State originally. And it was very transparent of Vrabel to say at the end of his comments regarding Jones that they hope he can be their left guard for them. With that said, I don't think this is a player that you're immediately handing that starting job to at left guard, so that's a position that still sticks out to me. And another one potentially at right tackle, right? They haven't re-signed David Kissenberry, who's still an unrestricted free agent. He didn't play all that well a year ago, gave up a ton of sacks, unfortunately led the team in that department. That really depends on how you see Dylan Radin going forward. Is he a tackle? Is he a guard? I thought he was a tackle coming into the league, but the Titans spent a lot of time playing him at guard last season, as well as practice, right? He spent a lot of time practicing guard. So I think those three positions really stick out to me: receiver, guard, and tackle. And we'll probably talk a little about tight end as well.
Yes, sir. Justin Melo, our guest, talking all things Titans and draft and NFL here on Blaine and Mickey.
Well, Justin, based off the moves this offseason by John Robinson, where would you rank him according to his moves? Do you give him a good ranking, bad ranking, or C, B? Where do you put him at? Where do you stack up against the other GMs?
Yeah, I think he's had a good offseason. I think you'd be hard-pressed to say that the Titans didn't get better this offseason. So with that said, I think probably a B or a B- at this point would probably be a fair grade. Back to what I said about them getting better. The addition of Austin Hooper at tight end is a monumental upgrade from what they had at the tight end position a year ago. They kind of neglected that spot a year ago after they let Jonnu Smith walk in free agency. They moved forward with a quartet, so to speak, of Jeff Swain, Anthony Furtzer, Tommy Hudson, and Michael Pruitt. So that wasn't really an adequate position group that they had last year. They didn't get enough production out of that spot. Austin Hooper is significantly better than what they had there in 2021. And then the addition of Robert Woods, despite him coming off the ACL, that's an injury. He described it as a clean ACL break, and we've seen it in recent years. That's not an injury that guys have typically struggled to return from like they used to, right? It's not the career ender that it used to be 10, 15 years ago. So I think Robert Woods is going to give you a lot more than Julio Jones did last season. So I think they've definitely gotten better than they were a year ago. With that said, there are still some positions that need addressing. Some of the ones that we just went through, one, potentially two spots across the offensive line. You certainly need more at receiver and tight end. So I think a B minus is fair, and there's certainly some room for improvement there still.
Well, I know Mickey wants the Titans to draft an offensive lineman in the first round, but me in particular, I'm a skill guy, so I'm always going to go skill. So I really want to know, I haven't done my backdrop, but I know what I've seen of them thus far, and I really like what I see. And this is from some receivers. They're not at big-name schools, but I want you to tell me, are they top 50 type picks? And that's two guys, and I want you kind of to break them down and tell me what they look like, even if they aren't. And that's Christian Watson from North Dakota State and Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama. I really like both of these kids, and I think they're going to be really, really good NFL football players.
Yeah, Tolbert out of South Alabama, measured in at the combine 6'1", 194. So many receivers had such a great combine that I feel like we didn't talk enough about his results. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.49, which is a really respectable time. This is a guy, that he really was South Alabama's offense a year ago. Obviously, a small school guy, as you mentioned. Yeah, 82 receptions, nearly 1,500 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. He is a 50-50 ball magician. You watch the guy on tape. What I like to say is he turns those contested catch 50-50 situations, they feel like 75-25 in his favor, right? He was coming down with them more than anybody. He's a really good natural hands catcher. He's got sticky hands. He high points the football. He understands how to use his size at the point of attack. He made big plays for that offense, both downfield and also with the ball in his hands. He's really underrated after the catch. He can create additional yardage for himself. So I really like Jalen Tolbert. This is such a deep receiver class. It's difficult to say whether or not he's a top 50 guy. I do think he's a top 75 guy. He absolutely should be in that range. Moving on to Christian Watson out of North Dakota State, I don't know that there's a receiver, scratch that, maybe a player in this draft class that has done his pre-draft stock a larger favor than Watson has. I mean, this guy has completely dominated the process, right? You're talking about a guy that went to the combine and just completely blew the lid off of Indianapolis. What he did out there was just absolutely outstanding. I mean, I've got the measurements right here in front of me, 6'4", 208, 10-inch hands. Then you get to the testing process, 11-foot 4-inch broad, a 38.5-inch vertical, and the 40 time is 4.36 official. I mean, that's just a ridiculous pre-draft process. I recently got to interview Watson for the Draft Network. I can tell you that there is a ton of interest in this kid. You're talking about top 50. He may not get out of the first round. I think the back end of that first round, that 28 to 32 range, could be his sweet spot. And if he does get out of there, you're going to see a lot of teams trying to trade up between 33 and 40 to get him because this guy is ready to play an athletic profile that's been compared to Calvin Johnson. I asked him about that. If you read my interview over at the Draft Network with him, that's obviously a lofty comparison. I don't think anybody is Calvin Johnson, but the measurements and the testing numbers, that's what they reflect. So this guy is just jumping through the roof right now, and I don't think he's going to be there closer to that 50th overall.
Sounds like that's my 26th pick. Okay. Right there by the Tennessee Titans. And we want to add a Vol. We get this question a lot, and I just want to make sure I am right on my assessment. I could be wrong, and that's Velus Jones and where you see him going. I say he's a middle round guy, but people here in Tennessee, they think after he ran that blazing 40 that he's going to go like the first 2 rounds, and I just I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, I think there's a good chance that Bulls fans probably need to temper their expectations on where he's going to get drafted. Look, he's had a good pre-draft process. I believe he was at the Senior Bowl, was really good there, put a lot of those corners in a blender, was running great technical routes, was getting open with ease, went to the combine, as you mentioned, ran a 4.31. I mean, that's an elite time, a 10-foot, 1-inch broad. So he's had a good pre-draft process. One thing I think we have to remember here, this is going to be a 25-year-old rookie, I believe he's going to be. He spent 6 years in college, right? The 2016 to 2019 campaigns were spent at USC before he arrived in Tennessee ahead of the 2021 campaign, and obviously spent the previous 2 years there. Look, he had more opportunities in that offense in 2021, and he did some good things. He's a slot receiver. That's a position that's becoming increasingly popular in today's NFL, and it's no longer the 5'8", 5'9", 5'10" slot receivers. You're looking at these big, dominant slot receivers, right? That's the direction the game is moving in. He's 6'2", 204. He's got some good size, speed, vision. He's a great returner as well on special teams. So I think there's a chance that'll factor into his pre-draft evaluation for teams, and he'll play for you on special teams. But I think the age factor needs to be weighed, and you can't ignore it, right? Teams are, you're going to be drafting 21-year-old, 22-year-old kids at some point. When you're looking at a guy that's going to be 25, 26 years old, I think that probably puts him into the late day 3 range.
Well, let's just stay one more guy from Tennessee, and we'll address a little bit, some more guys. But Alontae Taylor, is he a cornerback / safety / nickel guy? Well, where do you see him playing, or is he just a corner to you?
I personally think he's a versatile guy that can play multiple positions. I really liked what he did at cornerback this past season. I recently got to interview him as well over on the Draft Network, and we talked about the year that he had in 2021. He didn't mince words. I said, look, you took such a big step forward this past season. Why was that? You were a really good corner in the SEC, and that means something. And he said, look, I'm going to level with you. I had a much better relationship with the current coaching staff than I did the previous one. He thought that the new staff brought in a defensive scheme that was better suited to his skill set. He thought they simplified the defense a lot. He thought the previous staff made the defensive backs think a little bit too much pre-snap. They had a lot of checks and stuff they had to be aware of. And he said, you know what, we just couldn't play as fastly, as aggressively as we wanted to, and the new staff really played to our skill set. So that's a guy that took a big step forward this past year. He credits the new scheme and new staff as for a reason why. I think he's an outside corner personally. I really do think, and I asked him that question. I said, look, where do you see yourself playing? He said, look, I'm a press man cornerback all day long. Now, at the end of the day, he's not dumb. He knows that's the most desired skill set, right, that NFL defenses are looking for. But I really think he's a guy that can move around for you, but I do particularly like him on the boundary.
Well, we're Justin Melo at the Draft Network.
What do you think about Treylon Burks? He's such an interesting case.
Yeah, Burks, he's a guy that I absolutely loved on tape. And when I say loved, I loved him. I mean, you can turn on almost any game. Look what he did against Alabama. You want to talk about competition? You want to talk about proving yourself against the best of the best? He was unbelievable in that game against Alabama. He was so physical. The size stands out. Speed, run after catch ability. He can block, which is a trait we know the Titans really enjoy drafting. Auburn. Turn on the tape against Auburn. Go from Alabama to Auburn. He was unbelievable in that game. I remember scouting that game, and I just immediately wrote down next to my notes, this is an alpha wide receiver in every definition of the word. Now, he goes to the combine. He didn't do his draft stock any favors, right? We're not going to shy away from that. A 33-inch vertical. The wide receiver, the 40 time at the pro day and whatnot was time between 4.50 to 4.55, which I don't think was a terrible time, but people were certainly expecting him to run better. I really like the player. I think he's got number one receiver potentially, 6'2", 225, big physical guy. Titans have really liked big physical receivers right throughout their time. A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. You can go back, even look at tight end when they drafted Jonnu Smith. They love these big physical guys that can create for themselves after the catch. Treylon Burks does that. So His draft stock right now, it's a great question, Mickey, because there's a lot of people who are souring on him right now.
Yeah.
But I think you'd be really foolish to ignore the tape, man. The kid does some really special things on tape. We saw it throughout, several seasons over there at Arkansas. I like the guy. If he's there at 26, I think the Titans got to think long and hard about him.
Well, just to add to that, what was his numbers there, Justin, on the cone drills and the 3-cone? Because when I watched him, I only watched a handful of games. I didn't see a lot of extensive route running, and that's what carries you in the league. He's not going to be able to run away from all those guys like he did, even against the Alabama guys in the National Football League all the time. So I just didn't see a lot of – I saw goals, double moves, and slants. I didn't see him run routes. So I have to rely on like cone drills or anything else. Or if you saw him, do some route running and different extensive kind of routes, then those let us know.
You bring up a good point. I think that's the concern on him. That's one of the knocks is he didn't always create a ton of separation, right, within his routes. And a lot of it was simplified reads, as you mentioned. That's certainly one of the knocks on him. He actually did end up running the 3-cone at the combine. He did it in 7.28 seconds, to answer your question.
Okay, not bad.
There's somebody in the Zone TV chat, William, says, what about Wan'Dale Robinson? He said he'd be a good second-round pick. Right now, the Titans don't have a second-round pick. He's saying for a slot receiver. But there were some Titans fans who were kind of high on Jahan Dotson and Wan'Dale Robinson as maybe a later pick. But let me ask you this, not about them specifically, but just about those little bitty guys. Because some of the people who do work like yourself had put out some information earlier this offseason. It was like everybody who was ever under 5'9" and 185 or whatever, and like Deshaun Jackson was the one guy who'd had an extensive career. Where do you fall on these little bitty guys?
Hey, you've got to be really careful when drafting them, right? Cole Beasley is another outlier. If you pull up Cole Beasley's measurements, he's like the only productive NFL receiver in history at his measurements. Now, Wan'Dale Robinson, I'll say this. People talking about him being a second rounder, unfortunately, it couldn't be further from the truth. Unfortunately, he goes to the combine. He weighs in at 5'8", 178. Those are just, really poor measurements that are probably going to put him into the day 3, maybe even undrafted range, to be honest with you. I mean, and then he runs a 4.44, which is by no means a terrible time. But at that size, if you're not running 4.3 flat, that's tough, right? That's a tough evaluation for NFL general managers when you've got 6'3", 210-pound receivers running the same time as you. Wan'Dale Robinson, the tape is electric. It's a lot of fun. He transferred from Nebraska to Kentucky for the 2021 season, and he took a big step forward. He had more than 1,100 receiving yards. He really was that Kentucky offense this past season. And back to what Blaine said earlier, you watch your tape, it's a lot of quick hitters. It's jet motions, it's slants, it's screen passes. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot. He did line up everywhere for them, however. But I think when you're looking at Wan'Dale Robinson, you're probably looking at a 6th, 7th rounder, maybe even an undrafted free agent. Now, one little guy that I love, and I'm willing to contradict everything that I just said about him.
There's always one.
There's always one, right? And it's always one that gets you, and it's a local kid, so I'm glad I get to talk about him on the show, or somewhat local at least, Calvin Austin out of the University of Memphis. But you want to talk about a guy that had a different combine altogether, a 39-inch vertical and an 11-foot 3-inch broad. What did I say about running the 40 time at that size? Calvin Austin ran a 4.32. Right? It's an unbelievable time. This guy has done himself a ton of favors throughout the pre-draft process. He went to the Senior Bowl. Nobody could cover him. He was putting all those cornerbacks in a blender. Great separation, quickness, knows how to get open, is a savvy route runner. Really, like one thing I found really interesting about him, if you want to have a chuckle, is most college programs, they do their players favors throughout the pre-draft process, right? They list them a little bit taller, a little bit heavier than they end up measuring in at the combine. Well, whoever runs the Memphis's website, this is a call to start doing your kids some favors. They had Calvin Austin listed an inch shorter than he actually is. They listed Austin at 5'7". He actually came in at 5'8". So that was a minor win for Austin, but this is a really, really good player, knows how to get open. He's a guy I could potentially see getting selected in the 3rd round. When you say, well, little players, little receivers don't get selected in that range, never forget, all it takes is one team to fall in love with you. Tutu Atwell from the University of Louisville last season was an extremely small player. I believe he went in the 2nd round for the Los Angeles Rams. So all it takes is one.
Yeah, I believe he's been on a milk carton pretty much since then.
Much.
Justin Melo, our guest, at JustinM_NFL. Now think about all the stuff he's saying. You can get all that on his Twitter too, so you need to follow him.
Well, Justin, let's stay with the wide receivers there. There's a kid called Skye Moore.
Yeah.
What do you think about this kid, man? What round?
Skye Moore is a really, really fun player, and I can't wait to see where he ends up getting drafted. Again, another guy that went to the combine and did himself some favors, right? The broad jump, was excellent. 10-foot 5-inch broad. That put him in the 78th percentile among all wide receivers, dating back, I believe, 25 years. Ran a really good 40 at 4.41. Measured in at 5'10", 95, 10-inch hands, by the way, which was really shocking. He had the biggest hands of any receiver at the combine. For a guy that's 5'10", 195, there were receivers there that are 6'4", right, 220. So that was a bit surprising. It was a big win for Skye Moore. I really like him, right? You look at the program, West Michigan University, they've had some good prospects in the last 10 years, especially at receiver, right? Corey Davis, Blaine, who went in the second round, I believe it was last year, to the Seattle Seahawks. And it's funny, I didn't want to make the lazy comparison, but he reminded me a lot of Eskridge last year at WMU. Like Eskridge, he was their offense, right? He was so productive. A high volume passing game. They consistently targeted him. You saw him. You talk about route running, Blaine. He ran in breaking routes, right? Yeah. They did rhythm throws out of the run RPO game. Yeah. They threw him fades from the slot position when they got down into the red zone. So this is a guy that did everything for them. I really like the player. I'll be really curious to see where he gets drafted. I think he falls into that top 75 range. It's worth mentioning that this is such a deep receiver class, and some of these guys could get slightly lost in the shuffle, right, as teams start addressing other needs maybe, right? When they look at the board and say, hey, there's still 9 receivers we still like on this board, but there's only one center. So we're going to go ahead and take the center and address receiver in a later round. I really like Skye Moore. I would tamper the first-year expectations on him. There was very similar buzz for his teammate Eskridge last year. He didn't end up doing a whole lot as a rookie, right, in Seahawks, Seattle. Nope. As you got to acclimate, right, from a small program like WMU to the NFL. There's a process involved there. We saw it in Tennessee last year, albeit at a different position, but with Dylan Raditz, right, out of North Dakota State. So there's going to be a bit of an acclimation period for Skye Moore. I don't think he's a guy that lights the league on fire as a rookie, but I really like his long-term outlook and potential, and I think he could end up in that top 75 range.
We cannot let you go without giving us your QB 1, 2, and 3 in this year's draft, because the Titans may take one at 26. Who knows?
I mean, look, they're doing their work on quarterbacks, right? I mean, let's not pretend that they're not. They've been at, I think, every single pro day thus far. Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell's, Malik Willis's, they've been present for all of these pro days, so it's certainly worth mentioning. The quarterback, in my opinion, who's the most pro-ready, and this is such an intriguing class because there's a different flavor for every team and whatever you're looking for. The most pro-ready quarterback that really impressed me the most on tape was Pittsburgh's Kenny Pickett. Now, he took a huge step forward this past season. The production jumped off the charts compared to previous years. He's a 4-year starter at the position, has been in that system for a long time, same coaching staff, same head coach, offensive coordinator, and so on. And he just somehow exploded. It wasn't a change. It wasn't like Joe Burrow at LSU where, he walked into a new situation. No, this is a guy that's been in the same system, and for whatever reason, he exploded in 2021. I really like the player. I think he's extremely accurate, really smart with the football, has enough athletic ability to create for himself off script, pick up yards with his legs. He's by no means an athletic specimen at the position, but he's athletic enough. I think he's the most pro-ready. From that perspective, he reminds me a little bit of Mac Jones last year when everyone said Mac was ready to start immediately, which he was, but obviously Pickett is significantly more athletic than Mac Jones is. My QB2 personally is Malik Willis, although I do think he's probably going to be the first quarterback selected in this draft. I don't see a scenario where he isn't the first quarterback selected in this draft due to what? Due to the potential, the upside that you're getting with this kid. You saw what he did at the Combine. You saw what he did at the Pro Day. Just unbelievable, natural, rare arm talent on the kid. What are you betting on? You're betting on the upside with him. I jokingly said this recently, but I mean it. I don't see a scenario where Malik Willis settles in to a meddling starting quarterback. He is either going to light the league on fire or he's going to get a general manager fired, right? Malik Willis is not going to be Ryan Tannehill, right? He's not going to be the 15th best quarterback in the NFL. He's either going to be the 3rd best quarterback in the NFL or the 29th. That's That's the range of outcomes for Malik Willis. There's a lot of raw ability there, but what raw is a dangerous word, right? I think we all know that, right? There's a lot of that needs to be honed in, and I would be very careful about drafting this guy and asking him to start week one. This is a guy that needs to sit on the bench, needs time. You're talking about acclimating to the next level. That's tough as is for a quarterback. It's even tougher when you played at Liberty, right? So this is a guy that needs time. The sky's the limit, and he could go second overall to the Detroit Lions. I think he's going top 5, whether to Detroit or via another team that maybe trades up. Carolina should have a lot of interest in his services. Watch out for Pittsburgh if they feel bold enough to make a move into that range. He's personally my QB 2, but I do think he's going to be the first one drafted. Quarterback 3 is an interesting discussion, right? Because I think there are 3 quarterbacks that should be vying for that. Matt Corral from Ole Miss. You look at Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati, who lit the combine on fire and did his draft stock a ton of favors. I think he will be the 3rd quarterback selected personally. Heck, maybe even the 2nd. He might be able to get ahead of Pickett just due to the athletic ability and some of the things that you can do with him. And I like Sam Howell from North Carolina as well. I think that's a guy that people are maybe not talking enough about. When I watched Howell last season, the first word that comes to mind, I don't think gets enough credit, is the kid is a gamer. I mean, he hung in there week in, week out. North Carolina did not do him any favors. Look at all the skill position players they lost last year to the draft, right? They lost Miami Brown at wide receiver. There was a second receiver, I believe they had drafted in the 6th or 7th round that was a really good collegiate performer. At running back, who did they lose? Javonte Williams to the Denver Broncos, Michael Carter to the New York Jets. They lost so many big-time prospects and NFL players, and they didn't have that supporting cast this past year. Sam Howell was put in a really tough situation, and the offensive line was terrible. You watch him in some games last year, they made every defense look like Georgia's defense. I mean, it was a bunch of five-star prospects chasing after Howell on a weekly basis. So I felt bad for the guy, but he hung in tough week in, week out. He's a gamer. He's got a lot of passion for the game. I'm very intrigued by Sam Howell, more so than I am by the Ole Miss quarterback or Desmond Ritter personally.
Well, thanks. Great stuff, man. We got to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Right up against the break. Justin, fantastic stuff, man. Thank you so much. We'll talk again soon.
Awesome.
Pleasure's all mine.
Yes, sir. At Justin M. NFL, Broadway Sports, the Draft Network. Be right back. Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. We asked this question earlier. Boy, that Justin Melo stuff, that dude, we could have gone like 9 segments. We just did receivers. I mean, you can ask him anything, but we got really into the weeds.
I thought you were going to ask him about the old line, but you
I didn't have the heart to do it because I know that's what's going to happen.
They're going to draft a guard. They're going to draft a guard. So you won't throw a brick because it's not a tackle.
No, I know.
But it's going to be a guard.
If they get there and it's the Zion Johnson guy out of Boston College, who Vrabel knows because his son played with him on the same old line.
I think they're roommates.
Okay. They would know everything about this dude. I mean, everything about this dude. He's a good player.
Mm-hmm.
And you could think, you could roll this dude to guard for a couple of years and Ben Jones retires, or maybe one more year for Ben Jones, and then this dude could just be your center for the next 10 years. I just got a feeling. And we got into this some yesterday. Everybody who scouts receivers, all these scouting services, all these dudes that we listen to who tell us about this guy's 40 is this, and this guy's this, and this guy runs his routes and lowers his hips and gets out of his breaks. All those people always say, all the receivers are dead steeper than it's ever been.
Yeah, well, they're going to say that. But guess what? That is true. We don't have a second-round pick, so it doesn't apply to us. That's why I think they're going to take this Christian Watson kid, North Dakota State. You come and, talk to Dylan Radins. You have to get on a giddy up and get to going. Let's go, bro. Yeah, that's my guy. That's who I'm putting out my bow.
Oh, you're on that guy now.
26. Yeah, I've liked him, and I've asked people about him and the other kid from South Alabama. I want him to go in the South Alabama kid, too, even though he didn't run as fast, the Tober kid. He got over 100 yards. The reason why I watched him live because he played Tennessee.
Right.
And he put up over 100. And guess what? He was the only guy. He was the dude. So how did I mean, granted, he wasn't going to beat them by himself. Naturally, they got smoked. But, hey, man, he did that against some really good players. And that's SEC talent. So, yeah, I think these two guys, people are going to look at, a lot of people won't know who they are, and then they're just going to look at the school and then just kind of throw it in. The NFL is just a different animal there. I mean, just like as much as I love the smaller little receiver, I call them jitterbugs.
Yep.
As we've seen, how much have we heard? And just think, you have to run a fast 40 or you're not even going to be on the radar. The Tutu Atwell and then or your guy, Rondell Moore, 2 years ago with Purdue, which went to Arizona. I think he just had an okay season.
Yep.
But then how much better will he be? Like, is he going to be a 1,000-yard receiver? Like, I don't know. And we're talking about the elite of those jitterbugs. And I don't even know where. I mean, I saw him return punts, and I don't know if there's a place for those small guys, especially if you're not returning punts and kicks.
You and me were talking about this off the air one day, and the guy you said, okay, if we're going to talk about the best little people, and you brought up Warwick Dunn, who played 10 years and was tiny.
Well, he was a running back, but yeah,
that's unbelievable what he did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or the other guy that stands out to me is just Darren Sproles. He was a return man a lot of his career. He could catch passes, he could run. But what Justin Melo said, and you and me have talked about this, those little dudes, like Dexter McCluster was a pretty fast guy. As soon as he started getting leg injuries, that was it. He was gone out of the league. Mm-hmm. For all those little tiny people, it's like speed is their thing. Or super, super quickness. And like you said about Cheetah, he has the weird thing where he can do both.
Both at a high level, like no other.
Once they lose that, though, then they're just a tiny target. Then there's a little person who gets hit by people.
Well, I think it's even further than that, Mickey. And it's not just if they lose speed. They have the speed and the quickness. It's just they're small. Yeah. And when I say that, in a 5-yard window, those outside linebackers, they're going to swallow them up.
Ooh.
Are they jitterbugging? Because in the NFL, it's played vertically. It's not played horizontal.
Yeah.
So it's not like Little League. Oh, I'm going to make this guy miss. I'm going to make this guy. You'll make one guy miss, and you better get upfield vertical or you're going to get smashed. And then they're going to have to learn that they can't do that in the league.
Yep.
And then, okay, well, where does that put you? And then, all of a sudden, you got a whole bunch of the elite guys out there. Then the field becomes smaller for those guys. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to find creases. Unless you're playing in an open offense where they're throwing the ball. Like a small guy like that in the Titans offense, not going to work.
Yeah.
If you're in the Arizona offense, he has a shot.
Yeah.
He has a shot to be pretty good. So you have to spread it out. or you got to be a pro style offense. You got to be and just think, Adam Humphries is not a big guy. I would say he's a 5'10" guy. Beasley, as he mentioned, Edelman, all those laundry list of guys. One thing they had about them, they were built like running backs, and they probably weren't blazers, but they were superior route runners, and they weren't in the league for gadget guys, flare screens. That's why you don't see a lot of those things in the NFL. You can't play lateral. So the league is like, dudes, they coming to get you.
Yeah.
And guess what? That sideline's another guy. So then when you start doing that, that's not a lot of space out there for those guys to really make a lot of guys miss.
Which brings us right back to Christian Watson, who's 6'4", well over 200 pounds. That fits
this offense.
It fits what they want to do.
That's why I'm trying to take a calculated risk there.
No doubt. Let's calculate a risk our way to hour number 2. We will do that next. Jordan Dajani with NFL headlines coming up in about 20 minutes on Blaine and Mickey.
It is 2:04. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. It is Pro Day in Knoxville. Tennessee draft prospects currently working out in front of NFL coaches and scouts. Representatives from all 32 NFL teams currently present, including several from the Tennessee Titans. Defensive lineman Matthew Butler, cornerback Alante Taylor, wide receiver Velus Jones Jr., and offensive lineman Cade Mays are among the 9 total participants working out today in Knoxville. There was a Tiger Woods sighting at Augusta National this week, playing 18 holes ahead of next week's Masters, increasing speculation that he will play in the tournament. Woods is 14 months removed from a car wreck where he suffered serious leg and foot injuries, but has not confirmed either way whether or not he will participate. The Baltimore Ravens have extended head coach John Harbaugh through the 2025 season as NFL owners' meetings wrap up from Palm Beach. Now entering his 15th year as the head coach in Baltimore, Harbaugh is the league's 3rd longest tenured head coach. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once and your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Vols Pro Day today. Hoping to find some 40 times and stuff. Hadn't seen anything yet. I've seen some videos, but I haven't seen any hard numbers. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to track those down, but if we see anything before the end of the show, we'll tell you about the guys who are getting it done today.
Jones Jr., Cade Mays, Alante Taylor, Matthew Butler, Sean Payton, right? Is that his name, Payton? The receiver?
Javante
Payton, yeah. I was going to say Sean Payton. That's the head coach. Yeah, he went to Hillsborough, too, by the way. He transferred from Mississippi State.
Yeah, there's some Middle Tennessee flavor to this pro day today.
DB George too. He was injured most of the season, but some guys.
I did see video, of course, of John Robinson there, like beating on the lineman.
They had all 32 representatives from the league. Somebody was there from every team. So that's big news. There was a time there. There was a window there, Lucas. Well, Tennessee didn't even get anybody drafted, wasn't it? When was that time? Was the end of Butch, Jeremy Pruitt era?
Well, it was towards the tail end between Dooley and Butch. I think Tennessee maybe 20. It was right at the start of my college, so like 2014-15, that Tennessee had 0 players drafted for the first time in.
Right, I mean, that was 2 years in a row, or it was?
Yeah, I think 2 years. I think you're right. 2 years.
Is
in a row.
that not unbelievable?
Yeah,
that
I mean,
was
it was
crazy.
the first time in many decades that had happened.
I mean, it's. You can not like UT or you can love UT. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That a school with those resources wouldn't be producing NFL players.
And it was after, because the Dooley era ended and Cordero Patterson got drafted, right? And Justin Hunter.
He's still doing it.
It was a first rounder, and he's still doing it. Justin Hunter went to the league. But so I want to say it was after year 1 of Butch Jones, where Tennessee had like 23 freshmen starting, right, on both sides of the ball. So maybe that 2014 draft or so, 2013-14 in that range.
And nobody's coming out anyway from those freshman class for a couple years because he didn't come out. Yeah, it was a minute there. That's not the case this time. You have some guys. They at least got 8 guys out there, and I would assume a handful of them definitely get drafted. I would think.
I know Alante Taylor's a guy that you've watched. What do you see NFL wise when you see him?
Well, he's kind of an interesting player for me. I always not just look at ability, but I also have to look at mindset. And his mindset is as of a safety.
Yeah.
When I see him out there crunching and attacking receivers at the line of scrimmage, decleating guys after a player I think a Toa interception. I'm sure Lucas remembers this, and he decleated a guy.
Yeah, pick 6 against South Carolina.
I mean, and he's done it numerous times.
Right.
I've seen him, and I go, man, he plays ultra competitive and aggressive. I'm not sure on his actual foot speed. I think what did he run, a 4.45 or something at the combine? So that still puts him there at the corner. I really believe he can be a corner and be a good corner and a starting corner. I think he needs to work on his technique, because some of the things when I watch him closely, he can't do in the NFL. He tries to quick jam guys and gets overly aggressive and out of position. They should have taught that out of him. Both staffs let him do it because sometimes he got away with it, and it would eliminate the player. That's not going to happen in the National Football League, so he needs to stop all that. There's a lot of false foot movement, which is unnecessary, which puts him a step behind, it will, in the National Football League. So I just think if he's with the right coach who technically works on them technically, I think he'll be fine at corner. But if he doesn't get rid of that, things easily slide over to safety and be a really, really good safety with his hitting ability and his aggressiveness. So I think that's the easier play, but he definitely can be a corner and a really good one. He has length, he's long, and he's fast. So all he needs to do is just kind of hone that down and know when to be aggressive at certain spots like that. And I don't think he's going to play like that in this league. So I think he'll be fine there, just work on his technique.
Him and Kenneth George, you mentioned Theo Jackson, the other DB who's working out today.
Overton. I think he went to Overton.
Yeah, I believe that's right.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where the NFL sees him because I see him more safety. I know he played mostly nickel. I don't think he has the foot speed and the quickness to play that position in certain schemes, especially if he's going to run man-to-man. I kind of see him like a poor man's Logan Ryan. That's what kind of how I view him already right now. So I think he can get by at safety, though. Yep.
And Logan Ryan was one of those guys who, during his career, has transitioned, and now will finish his career as a safety.
He had an incredible last year, though, and it shows you to the point of what Justin just said about the scheme and the system. He played freely, and that's when I'm always talking about playing freely. People say, well, that means nothing. Well, if you're out there thinking as an athlete and you're unsure, that does not allow you to play freely. And so when you can't play like that as an athlete, you're definitely are handicapping yourself. You saw the entire defense play freely this past season, and a lot of guys' games turned up a whole nother level. And nothing against Pruitt. I think his was a little more NFL-ish, accomplished. And then every week was a different kind of game plan where they had all these adjustments where they only practiced it 1 week.
Right.
That's the NFL. That college is you want to run staple plays that you run all the time, regardless if they know what you're doing, but you want your players also understanding what they do. And that's even more important at the college level. And those are kind of two different things, the difference between the league and college. It gets much more complex, and you have all day to game plan and study your opponent. You're not in class.
Right.
You're not have all these other distractions where you're all day football in the NFL from 6 to 6.
Right.
So totally different. That's why you can put in schemes and systems and adjustments all day. So, I'm interested to see how well some of these guys do in the league, even if they don't get drafted or do get drafted, because I think a lot of them have potential in the right system. I think they can fit in and flourish, though, and do really well. Who else is possibly
Well, Velus Jones is the guy that people are talking.
Yeah.
Everybody, people. He got mentioned in his own TV chat. We've been tweeted
today. He is an
today.
Explosive player. I'm excited that they finally put him in the slot. That typically shows you when you're a kick returner, punt returner, you are a poor man's running back, but you play receiver. He's built up nicely. I think he'll have a nice career. I just don't think. I know everybody keeps bringing up the age. For me, if I'm scouting, I don't care what age he is because he's only going to be with us one contract anyway. So that's a 3-year deal. So that doesn't really bother me. He's 25.
About to be 25. Yeah.
Right. So he's about to be 25. So I want to say he's 5th round or somewhere there about, and then Cade Mays, I think is about the same thing. And I think it helps him a little bit that he played multiple positions. But I think ultimately his position in the NFL is going to be, this is going to surprise some people. I think he's going to be a center. I videoed him. I was right down there on the field at the combine and watched him do drills. He wasn't the massive looking guy that some of the other players looked at and that were going to be playing guard and tackle in the NFL. And that was all college players.
Yeah.
And he could have leaned out just because of the combine. He's trying to run fast and all those things. He just didn't look like that massive. He doesn't look like Lawan. He doesn't look like the Benji Olsons, the guys that I play with. So he didn't look like that. He just looked like, and that's not to say he can't be a good guard. He looked more on the Ben Jones.
Wow.
But taller.
Yeah.
So that's what he looked like to me. So that was just my assessment. I'm not a, great, expectations on, assessing offensive lineman, but that's what I saw when I look at him compared to other NFL. And I think he could flourish there. That's what I said. Someone has to see the vision of where you see them playing. And I think he could be a stud there and start for a long time.
Got the GM talking here, Blaine Bishop.
I never liked him flipping him from guard to center. I always thought he was a guard in college. But obviously he has some skill sets that they liked him at tackle, and he was their best athlete. Those guys that play tackle in the NFL, people will be amazed at some of these 6'5", 320 and how these guys can move, man. And it's really astonishing. And I just didn't see him in nowhere near that kind of category as far as a tackle in the National Football League.
You always say about those guys, the most nimble ones, give them a basketball and go watch what they could do. Like Lawan, give him a basketball.
Right. Yeah, he's going to dribble up the court like he's a guard, like he's Lucas, and then you're the shark guy out there, like myself, and I'll be like, well, what am I supposed to do? You're up here dribbling up, taking it through your legs. So yeah, those guys are phenomenal athletes. I mean, don't let those bellies fool you. Those bellies can move.
Yeah,
and up and down and eat and store a lot of food and
some of those dudes don't even really have a belly. I mean, they're just
it's totally different.
Whoa. So they're unicorns.
So I think all those guys, I think they have a great shot. I really do. I like all the guys we mentioned. I think they're going to be in the NFL, whether drafted third round, fourth round, fifth, wherever they go, they have great shots.
Well, we'll get you some numbers, like I said, if we find them. But I do know John Robinson was up there, and he was working on all the big guys today. Lots of video of him going through drills with them. So he's getting an up-close and personal look at him. We'll get an up-close and personal look at Jordan Dajani. Coming up next, we got new overtime rules. Lots going on in the NFL. As always, Jordan Dajani covers it all for CBS, and he will join us next on Blaine and Mickey.
I know who can. The coach, Doug Matthews, will react to Tennessee's pro day.
Boy, this is Lucas. You back in the disco era. Taste of Honey. Boogie, oogie, oogie.
Yeah, man. What year was that, man? I think I remember listening to that when I was like 3.
This won a Grammy. This song.
A little taste of honey.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they were like Best New Artist. This won them a Grammy. They had a female guitarist and bass player. Janice Marie is the bass player. She's fantastic.
We should have a segment where you just guess what year this music was.
It's not a bad idea.
That it came out for Mickey, because you're the guru.
If I had to guess,
Look it up.
I would want to say 77 or 78, but if I had to bet Lucas's money on it, I'd guess 78.
78. Oh man, I was 5.
78.
Oh! Let's go!
Nice.
Let's go.
Oh, that was
Don't challenge me on disco
nice.
I'll
music.
test you with the next one.
All right.
Hey, that's what's up.
Jordan Dajani. It's like I won the lottery. I
we have a
remembered
call?
what year that song was recorded.
Oh yeah.
Jordan Dajani will join us in just a minute, but Razorback in Fairview is on the Mark Spain Real Estate Hotline and wants to weigh in. What's going on, Razorback?
Not much. Yeah, this is the first time I've called in. I enjoy y'all's show a lot. And like I said, I'm a homer. I'm a Razorback through and through. But I coached about 35 years in South Arkansas, and I had retired, and that was the time that Traylon Burks was coming up from another town in our conference. I watched him from the time, just as a spectator, from the time he was in the 9th grade till he graduated high school. And obviously he was a man amongst boys in high school. And then keeping up with him when he went to Fayetteville, I don't know that he'll be there by the time we get to the 26th pick. I know he has a visit with Green Bay, a pre-draft visit with Green Bay, and I think they're right after our pick, the Titans. Being a coach, I coach the offensive line, and you can get an argument about what position's more important. Well, I mean, they're all important, all the way to the deep snapper, everybody.
Oh yeah.
But I hope if we get to the 26th pick, and he's still there, we can get him. He is I can't imagine A.J. Brown, Traylon Burks, and Woods on the field at the same time.
Razorback, he's a Warren guy, right? Warren High School?
Yeah, he came from Warren.
People would be shocked if they knew how many wide receivers had come from Warren. It's like wide receiver high school. What high school did you coach at?
Crossett.
Okay, I'm from Harrisburg, so we did not play the brand of football that you guys did down in South Arkansas. But I know all about those South Arkansas guys.
Yeah, he of course, you're right. Warren has turned out receivers after receivers. What was the little one they had? Played in NFL for a while.
Jarius Wright, Greg Childs, both of those guys, yeah.
Childs and Wright, they just turned them out. But Burks, I know they look at the combine and all that. He just ran a 4.5 flat. I say just a 4.5. That's pretty good. But, there's and Blaine probably understands what I'm talking about here, and you do too. There's a football fast.
Yep.
And then there's just a clock fast. And I never saw anybody catch Traylon Burke in the SEC that was behind him.
Yep, and it's for sure that some of those guys will be in the NFL.
Thank you, sir. Razorback.
As Justin said, even against Alabama. And we know some of those DBs going to be in the NFL. Yeah. And he was pulling away. That's one thing that jumped out. You go, man, and it doesn't equate to 4.5? He looked like he was a 4.3 guy once the equipment's on. So everybody laughs at me, and I go, we need to have guys running with their equipment on at the combine, at their pro day. It's laughable, but at the end of the day, that's what you're going to be doing. There's a lot of it's different in track to football speed. I used to train with a guy who was on Olympics, Quincy Watts, and we go and run, and he has beaten me by 5-10 yards on 100-yard sprints.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, big gap, 10 yards. That's a big gap on the track.
Yeah.
We go to the football field, we put on cleats, and then we're running. He's barely beating me on the football field. The same exact length. Total different. And I don't even know how to explain it. And there was no we put on pads.
Right.
It was just different.
Jordan Dajani, when you put pads on him, he's fast. I bet Jordan can run fast and people chase him. Jordan, how in the world are you doing?
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me back on. No, unfortunately, I'm not too fast in pads. My dream was always being a wide receiver, but there's a reason they moved me to tight end. I was the pudgy pass catcher, so I didn't have too much speed. But but I was pretty good at catching the passes for the 2-point conversions.
Hey, man, that's a valuable skill. Titans could have used you in the playoffs last year.
Man, what's your measurables? Maybe they'll get you in the draft just a little bit, get a free agent tryout.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants a 5'9", 5'10" tight end. But
Yeah.
I'll put myself in there. I'm sure I'll get some attention. Right?
Oh man, that could be H-back tight end-ish, move guy.
What were you hitting the scales at in those days?
Oh man, I was lesser then. I was actually in shape. I was probably around maybe like 175, 180. So I tried to keep fit, but my body fat percentage was a little bit higher, so that hurt me.
Oh, well,
little fluffy, maybe.
Maybe a little fluffy.
Jordan Dajani, our guest. All right, speaking of 2-point conversions, the Titans had an overtime thing that we all loved, that if you score first and you go for 2 and you get it, the game's over. That did not get picked up, just 2 possessions. But has the NFL solved playoff overtime? I saw there were 3 teams actually voted against it.
Yeah, they did. That was kind of interesting. And I think it was the Bengals, Vikings, and Dolphins. Kind of interesting considering the Bengals just played the Super Bowl. But, yeah, speaking about the Titans' proposal, I thought it was interesting, and I thought it kind of played a role as well. It wasn't exactly the same proposal that the Colts and the Eagles sent forth, but it did prove to those decision makers that NFL teams are trying to come up with different items where they could adjust the NFL's overtime. So I think that obviously served its purpose. I think a lot of people were surprised to see this get passed as quick as it did, I guess I should say. I know there was momentum going this way, but when it's all said and done, I think it was probably the right decision. I don't feel strongly one way or another, but it was very clear momentum was pushing us in this new direction, and that became clear when we watched that Chiefs-Bills divisional round matchup in the postseason.
Yeah, they were never not going to let a young star quarterback get a shot to win a game again after that. Jordan Dajani, CBS Sports covering the NFL, our guest on Blaine and Mickey.
Well, Jordan, there at the owners' meeting, and I saw Shanahan talk about Jimmy G and how he's going to be on the team. It's just kind of interesting that, what do you think is going to happen with this whole situation? Because it was this throwing arm where he had surgery, and whether you can call it minor or, serious or not, it was this throwing arm. The guy went to the Super Bowl and the conference championship over the last couple of years. So what do you think the view of Jimmy G in the league is? Is he a system guy, or he's a guy that's just an average player in a great system?
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up the surgery, because everything we were told earlier this offseason was that was not going to be something that affected his trade value. But, of course, it became evident very clearly, or very quickly, I should say, that it did affect that trade value. Now, when it comes to evaluating Jimmy G and his future moving forward, I do feel like he was somewhat of a system quarterback. I think he's a serviceable quarterback. But at the same time, the quarterback position in the NFL is the most important for a good reason. And when it comes to teams trying to acquire those new quarterbacks to lead their franchises, they're looking for a guy that can help heighten their ceiling. And in my mind, I don't think there's many GMs, if any, that look at Jimmy G as a guy who's going to elevate your franchise to the level of where you want it. There were certain games last year where it felt like the 49ers were winning despite Jimmy Garoppolo. And when the 49ers did have success, it was because Jimmy Garoppolo was doing a great job as a game manager, throwing accurate slant routes, getting the ball quickly into the hands of his playmakers. So I'm a little surprised that he has not been traded just yet. I know there's been some talk about questioning should the 49ers release him. I don't see that coming to fruition, and I think Kyle Shanahan said as much at these meetings. But I also don't expect that Jimmy G is going to be on the 49ers roster for at least a full season. I think worst-case scenario, maybe a quarterback goes down due to injury in the preseason, OTAs, whatever it might be, and that's where Jimmy G could find his new home. Obviously the trade market hasn't come to fruition just yet, but I do believe Jimmy G will be playing somewhere else next year.
Well, with Jordan Dajani, NFL writer for CBS Sports, and let's just stay with the quarterback, and let's just throw age out there and past history. Let's just look at the last 3 years of their career so far, and I want you to compare these two quarterbacks. That's Matty Ice and Ryan Tannehill. Who's the better quarterback? What tiers are they in? Kind of take us through what you think about both of these guys as of today in the last 3 years.
That's a great question. And when it comes to Matt Ryan, I'm kind of torn because he's about to turn 37 on May 17th. And Ryan Tannehill's obviously younger. And I think Ryan Tannehill's had better games as of late compared to Matt Ryan. But when it comes to Matt Ryan, I mean, he obviously was suffering behind a lackluster offensive line under a first-year head coach. Weapons were absolutely depleted with Calvin Ridley gone, Julio Jones gone. So he was struggling. He probably does have some tread left on the tires, but as I told you guys on your show before, he's probably not a quarterback I would have aimed for in free agency. When it comes to Ryan Tannehill, I mean, if we take away this past year, he was looked at as that borderline top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And according to those advanced metrics, when it comes to throwing the ball down the field, accurate, being great off of play action, yes, he benefited off Derrick Henry, no doubt about it, but he was efficient. So I lean towards Ryan Tannehill in that matter. I know a lot of fans out there listening have a bad taste in their mouth still from that Bengals game, but I think that you can still continue to build around Ryan Tannehill. That's why I think it's important to get a wide receiver in this draft, even adding on to Robert Woods. Help get him as many weapons as he needs so that this Titans offense can find the success it wants to. So because of the age factor and maybe a little bit of recency bias, I'm leaning towards Ryan Tannehill.
There you have it with Jordan Dajani talking about who's better, Ryan Tannehill or Matty Ice. I guess one more for me on the quarterback, and that is Deshaun Watson getting the guaranteed contract, regardless if he plays next season or not with the off-the-field issues. How does this change the contractual issue going on with other quarterbacks? And I'm thinking in mine is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, it changes a ton. And it's tough, too, because Deshaun Watson probably, just given his circumstance, right, over what's happened over the past calendar year, he probably wasn't the quarterback that deserved to have that fully guaranteed contract and kind of set that marker. And, I mean, there's two facets to this. One, of course, for Lamar Jackson is, okay, well, I'm the next great, NFL quarterback up for contract. I've won the MVP. I've found success with this franchise. How much more am I worth compared to Deshaun Watson? But the other thing to keep in mind, this is what I would be thinking about is, hey, I'm Lamar Jackson. I've been a great leader for this Baltimore Ravens franchise. I've kept my nose clean. I've been a way better leader. What are you guys going to do for me compared to what the Cleveland Browns did for this guy they're virtually taking a flyer on who's going to be suspended some games in 2022? That would be a negotiating tactic on my part. So it makes things very, very tough. I think there was some strategy behind it, I guess I should say, because obviously the Browns made the Ravens' life a lot harder, similar to what the Raiders did for Tyreek Hill. In terms of trading for Devontae Adams, the Raiders actually kicked Tyreek Hill out of the AFC West. So I don't think that's going to happen with Lamar Jackson, but at the same time, this historical event happening when it comes to fully guaranteed money for quarterbacks certainly has a negative effect for franchises who are looking to extend their current signal callers.
Well, we're Jordan Dajani, NFL writer for CBS Sports.
Jordan, what did you think this weekend as people started losing their minds? I guess it was Rich Cimini, the Jets reporter, who had kind of floated out, well, the Jets are looking at all the receivers for potential trade, and they mentioned A.J. Brown, and some Titans folks just about lost their minds over that.
Yeah, I don't know why that happened. I mean, I don't even think we even wrote anything on CBS Sports for it because, I mean, great for the Jets. They want to go get that next great wide receiver, and they're going to try to trade for guys like Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, and two of those guys are probably untouchable. I don't think that you're going to have a deal that's going to come to fruition where you can't acquire their services. So, yeah, it was just a report telling me that the Jets were going to be aggressive, but as Robinson said, A.J. Brown is going to be a national for a long time. They're going to figure out how to extend him and give him the money that he deserves. I saw that report as well, but I didn't put too much thought into it. I really don't believe that A.J. Brown was near the trade block.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody really believed that. That was just interesting. Meanwhile, every time Irsay or any of the Colts brass does another interview, the bus backs over Carson Wentz again. That beeping sound is him getting backed over again by Irsay.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, first of all, I want to say it's pretty clear that there was some sort of divide in the Colts brass. I mean, we have Frank Reich saying that, I really believe Carson Wentz could be a top 10 quarterback again someday. And then we have Jim Irsay come out just guns blazing. I mean, he called the Carson Wentz era a mistake. He said it was, quote unquote, very obvious the Colts had to move away from Wentz. He talked about how telling the regular season finale was and that win and you're in situation. He said that Wentz's lack of leadership in that situation was inexcusable. He talked about leadership issues he's heard from his teammates just in general as well. And, I mean, I agree with him in the sense of I think they probably should have parted ways. I don't think Carson Wentz was going to be the quarterback that was going to help elevate this franchise. I know we only had 1 year, but still, I mean, there's several circumstances and instances you could point to support Jim Irsay's thesis. But, man, this looks bad for the Washington Commanders, who clearly targeted Carson Wentz, and there just continues to be negative media about their new franchise quarterback coming out, and it was a deal that I think Washington overpaid for as well. So it's a new era in Indy. I think they're probably better for it, but at the same time, as I mentioned, I don't think Matt Ryan is exactly the guy to lead the Colts to a Super Bowl at this stage in his career.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where we are next year with them. Blaine and Mickey, Jordan Dajani joining us from CBS Sports.
Well, I guess one more about the quarterbacks, and I'm interested to see if Pete Carroll is at the last line here with the Seahawks. And I say that because you got Drew Lock, you got Eason, and then who? Who's the other quarterback competing? No one with experience in this league and on the roster. And then if you draft another kid that's a young player, then that buys you some time. But I don't know how patient the owner would be at this point in time. Man, this could be the move that kind of makes Pete Carroll's last year at Seattle it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something I've been wondering myself as well. And I think Pete Carroll said something, I think it might have been yesterday or early today, saying that, the Seahawks want to re-sign Geno Smith, the quarterback that started a few games for them last year. Of course, that's not Baker Mayfield or Jimmy G or anything like that, but it's interesting that he made that point since Seattle already does have a couple of quarterbacks on roster. Pete Carroll also mentioned that the Seahawks are still in what he called the quarterback business, which I think is a fair way to put it. Whether that's going to come via trade or in the draft is TBD. I don't know anything about the situation, but I'd like to think that the Seahawks have been talking to the Browns about a potential Baker Mayfield trade. I would guess that the compensation has been a main sticking point in my hypothetical if they are talking about a trade. But the Seahawks are going to have to add another quarterback, and Geno Smith is probably not the guy that they want trotting out on the field in week 1.
One more. It's about receivers and the high-price receivers, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, and where this is going with the wide receivers' pay. Do you think this is going to become more of a habit where they're going to use them, teams are going to use them as trade bait to get more picks and collateral after they have done a great job with them, and they don't want to give them the huge contract and knowing every year there's going to be a draft full of wide receivers because of 7-on-7, all this passing league in college. I think it's going down this road. What are your thoughts to think about that? Because, I mean, it's crazy to think that Adams and Tyreek Hill, elite players, and still have a lot left in the tank, have been traded. So it seems to me this is starting to trend as well.
Right. That's an interesting question. To be honest with you, it's obviously early. I think that it's headed in that direction. But at the same time, in my mind, when it comes to this wide receivers market, when it comes to the contracts being handed out, it's got to correct itself at some point. How many receivers are we really going to see make $30 million or more a year? I just don't see it happening as quickly as maybe some are anticipating. But in terms of a trend that you've specifically identified, I see that definitely happening this year, and we may not be done. I think DK Metcalf from Seattle could be on the move. Maybe we already talked about the New York Jets. The Kansas City Chiefs are interested in trading for another top wide receiver. DK Metcalf could be on the move. So it's an interesting point because, as you mentioned, the wide receivers class in this upcoming draft is so rich that when you have some of these younger guys, and all of this is obviously hinges on how your franchise is going and the state of your team, but obviously you want to take your picks and try to land one of those lottery tickets in the draft as opposed to having to pay one of those younger guys top market money in an offseason that's just been so dramatic. So I don't have a specific answer. I think it's going to be an interesting trend that we're all going to have eyes on moving into the 2023 offseason. But at this point right now, it certainly looks that way.
Jordan, fantastic stuff, man. Look forward to talking to you next week.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Jordan Dajani at Jordan Dajani. All right, when we come back, we get in our time machine to 1993. Blaine Bishop, the GM, evaluates Blaine Bishop, the Ball State cornerback. That's next. Blaine and Mickey. Yep. Blaine and Mickey 104.5 The Zone. So it's a season of evaluation. J. Martin Ramon called it the season of lies, but it's also the season of evaluation. So everybody goes to a pro day, and they're like, this guy broad jumped 10'8", and then he did this and he did this, and his 3-cone drill was off the charts, and then we try to think, okay, what does all this translate? And then the amazing thing is, by the time a guy gets to this point, there's lots of tape of him playing football for whoever he plays for, and for sometimes it's like, maybe this is a confirmation, like everything you see on tape. Then they go and check all the boxes on pro day, and you go, okay, did it on tape, did it in pro day. But then what happens sometimes, crazy stuff is, like a guy looks great on tape, and then he tests poorly. Or some dude just out of the box has these amazing test scores.
Right. Then you go back to the film,
right.
Or you go to their pro day and say, okay, let's see if he can duplicate that again. And you go back and watch film again. So that's why I've always relied, me personally, on the film.
Yep.
Because if they go, oh, man, he runs a 4.3. Well, how in the heck did that other guy over there who ran a 4.5 catch him? How did he catch him? In the game.
Yep.
He 4.3, 4.5, that's a big difference. He caught him. Yeah, so that always add up. Doesn't equate to sometimes game speed. Maybe he doesn't run as well with pads on.
Yep.
Maybe he's a little slower. He's not as powerful, not as quick.
And the greatest example of all time is Jerry Rice, the GOAT, who people were like, hey, what'd he run? Like a 4.7 or something. And the 49ers still drafted him in the first round, and then he spent his career running away from people.
All the time.
All the time.
Kind of just like Traylon Burks.
Yep. So this got you to saying, ask me how I would have evaluated myself. Because Blaine played safety. If you watched him play, he was a safety cornerback in college.
Mm-hmm.
So people come to Ball State's Pro Day, 1993, ahead of the draft. They're evaluating a boundary corner named Blaine Bishop.
Yeah. What would have been my evaluation of me at this point in time compared to today's game? I would have been, very athletic and explosive, great IQ. You can tell that on film and everything else. Aggressive for a corner. So boundary corner typically plays safety in the pros. Had some great lateral quickness. Never really saw him play off coverage a lot. He played man-to-man, bump and run every single play. So it means he's playing with a lot of confidence in his ability, at least in the MAC conference. How does that translate to the pros? I would have said he's stiff in the hips, probably doesn't have long speed, not as good at tracking deep balls up in the air. And I would probably be conflicted if he was a draftable player because of now guys are gotten bigger, stronger, faster. So I probably would have, and it's a guy we want to bring into camp, and I think, let's see, seems like he's a great competitor. And you look at his background, he played at a Division II school initially, transferred, believed in himself once again, and then dominated in the MAC conference to prove that he was what he thought he was. So those are kind of guys, and he's been a captain at every level he's ever played at. Those are another factors that I would say that I want that type of player. It doesn't mean you're going to be a captain of a pro team, but it shows he has leadership ability, and at worst case scenario to be in his group. So I would love to see him compete. So I would probably say this guy's a great free agent, probably a guy that makes our roster, at worst case scenario, probably on the practice squad. Probably undrafted because we can get him because he's at Ball State. Probably can get him in the later rounds, but I would probably say in this day and age, guys are bigger, stronger, faster. If I was the same size I was when I came out, I would probably say free agent.
By the time you got drafted, had you thought, okay, if nobody drafts me, this is where I want to sign? Because I know you'd done your homework. If the Oilers hadn't drafted you, where would you have signed, given your choice? Like, this is where I'm going.
We had already filled because I was 214, and it probably was about 15 more picks. And I was, I thought I was going to go like 5th, 6th round. That's hard to say. It probably would have been one of the 2 New York teams.
Ooh, man, and the Big Apple.
Them are the Bengals.
Oh,
the bumbling Bengals.
The bumbling Bengals with Blaine. I love it.
Yeah.
There you go. Scouting report for the young hitman right there. Well, 8th round draft pick of the Houston Oilers.
Yeah.
Still getting it done today.
Well, in the meantime, in between, these guys going to have to wait. But be careful out there, everybody.
I know.
Later tonight.
It's
I know
stormy.
Mickey's a as a wreck. But in the meantime, in between time, peace.